Good. Welcome to all of you to this Community Conversations evening, the Council's community engagement programme, and one of the aspects of this programme is a series of events hosted by your local councillors. So may I start by introducing them, and then I'll say who I am. They're far more important, that's why. So I have got there Councillor Wallo from South Richmond, Councillor Paulina Vasileva from also South Richmond. I'm trying to get them in order, see, but I've not done very well. Councillor Varley, South Richmond, Councillor Baldwin from North Richmond. On to number 5, Councillor Warren, North Richmond. Richard Pine, North Richmond. So the 2 Richards from North Richmond.
That's right.
That's making life difficult. Right. Councillor Vollen for Kew and Councillor Bridges Westcott, also Kew. We have one apology. Sadly, Councillor Craigie can't be with us, also representing Kew. So thank you very much, councillors, for being here this evening. My name is Wilma Roost. I am the team rector of the Richmond Team Ministry and the vicar of St Mary Magdalene in Richmond. The question I get asked most is, where is St Mary Magdalene? And I hate having to say this bit. It's behind Tesco's. It's only been there 800 years. But that's the way it is. It's that lovely little area behind Tesco's, off Paradise Road. I've been the vicar there and the team rector for the last 7.5 years. And I live in this area, and like you, I care passionately about our community. So I feel quite honoured having been asked to chair this meeting, which means I will be your timekeeper and help with the asking of questions. And that includes the questions from the people who are watching this via a live stream. I think about 8 people are with us at the moment. So questions can be coming from there as well. May I do the housekeeping rules? May I remind you where the fire exits are? Do you know where they are? No, I don't either, but I can see green signs. So I'm going to suggest that if anything happens, we follow those green signs, if that's okay with you. Could I ask you please to switch off your phones, or at least ensure they are on silent? Whenever we do a wedding in church, I ask everybody to get their phone out and to double check it, because did you know this is a new rule in the Church of England? If your phone goes off during a wedding service, it means you're paying for the reception. I don't know what fine I can give you tonight, but please turn the phones off if you can. If you've been to these meetings before, you will know this already, but may I just say that I am an independent chair, partly because I'm a Dutch national, which means I'm allowed to vote in local elections, but not in national elections. But this is about community, and that's why I am your chair tonight. And I will help field the questions and ensure that time is kept. The agenda for tonight is, after these introductions, I'm going to ask 4 of our councillors to speak and give us an overview of the achievements of the past months. Then there will be priority theme discussions, and we have 4 topics, and questions will come from, will be answered by the panel, but also questions from the floor. And then there will be open questions, and the event will close, absolutely close, at 9 o'clock. One final practical thing from me. When you want to ask a question, there will be someone walking around with a microphone. Please do not ask your question before you have received the microphone. Otherwise, the people who are watching the live stream won't be able to hear a thing you're saying, and your question may be very important. So please do wait patiently for the microphone, and then feel free to hold it close to you as if you're eating an ice cream. As I already said, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed, and it will be available on the council website if you want to hear some of the answers and things that have been discussed again. Now, I'm ahead of time, but is that okay if I move on? Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to ask the two councillors for South Richmond, Councillor Varley and Councillor Barlow, to speak each for 2.5 minutes each on what has been achieved in the past months.
Thank you very much. Feels like we're on a University Challenge panel here, and I'm hoping we're on the best team. So, just to talk about, award achievements, but obviously there are award issues and achievements. We have been involved in planning decisions, but also in scrutinising planning applications, such as former House of Fraser and Richmond Inn Hotel. Those are major planning applications in South Richmond ward. We've also been involved in discussing, or at least having an opinion on, some of the telecoms masts applications that have been put in. Some of them not necessarily in South Richmond, but they've been objected to by Friends of Richmond Green, among other people. Traffic and transport, we've had some traffic safety and pedestrian safety measures established in Alton Road, which is the junction of Alton Road and Sheen Road. That was following on from residents who were really concerned about that particular junction, and they were worried about parking on curbs and idling as well. So we've followed up on that. Other major traffic and transport issues were, and still are, Kings Road traffic scheme, which is going to be reconsulted on, and Freestyle Road traffic scheme, which is, I believe, St. Paulina, I think that's probably ready to go. In traffic and transport as well, we've advised and helped council officers to decide on the installations of new bike hangers in the ward. That's obviously a key priority. Active travel, key priority for me as a Green Party councillor, and also supporting residents who want public EV charge points near where they live. I think we got a zebra crossing repainted on Eaton Street. I'm classing it as a win, but I'm not completely sure about that. On licensing, we objected to WH Smith wanting to sell alcohol at the Richmond Station branch, and supported the licensing team when it nearly went to appeal. I think they dropped the appeal. Also, Richmond Harbour Hotel's plans to extend their licence, we objected to that. And we've also been involved talking to residents about noise and ASB outside the Viva nightclub on Hill Rise. As a member of the Green Party group, I've been also helping the group to raise various issues and starting a debate on housing and the council's role with regard to affordable and social housing. Also a Thames Water motion, Thames Water ever popular in the borough, and we've brought a water motion.
May I ask you to draw to a close?
I am drawing to a close. I am closing.
Thank you. Councillor Barley, may I hand over to you?
Yes, indeed. Well, first of all, I want to say that I'm not going to have the detail that Councillor Warlow has put into that. I want to say that we're mindful in South Richmond of the wider borough considers South Richmond to belong to the whole borough. We have theatres, we have cinemas, we have the Green, we have the Riverside, and we want to do things to support bringing in tourism for our businesses, and also want to also work for our residents, of course, as well. But we're mindful of the bigger, wider picture, which we think is very important. And in that respect, I think one of the successes that we've seen in the last 18 months is the growing presence of the police in our community. And this is really welcome. It started off and still is there as the safe space at Richmond Station on a Friday and Saturday night. And that presence of the police there gives confidence to other developments in the town centre. What we want is we want to have a bigger, better presence so that will support our nighttime economy as it's growing, and also make people feel safe to come to South Richmond for tourism purposes as much as anything else. So we feel that increasing presence of the police is a very welcome thing. Obviously, another major thing that's been rumbling through is the toilets, the public toilets for Richmond Town Centre. We can't say it's a success yet, but it is a success that it's on the agenda, and that we are, in principle, finding options for locations. And I think it'd be very surprising if it didn't come to pass that we will have public toilets in Richmond Town Centre within a couple of years, hopefully. And then we mustn't forget that the other very important, let's call it thing that's going on, is the consultations that are going to be coming forward for the future of Richmond Town Centre. And if there are any questions about that, we can try to address that. But the important thing to remember is that we're not in a consultation phase yet. We're just in a phase of taking views. Although I might be what's the word, corrected in that regard in due course. But we will be involving stakeholders within the communities in due course. And there will be proper full consultations going on. So if people feel that they're being left out of that loop, they really need to come forward and let us know. And finally, I know I'm going to be cut off, but we should say that we don't forget that we have to deal with our own residents' issues as well. And potholes is the things that come up this time of year. I feel a big improvement is we've now been able to move beyond just simple pothole repairs, and we're now implementing thermal repairs on the roads. And this is a significant improvement to the road surface compared to just pothole repair. So that's my take on it, and hang over to other people along the way.
Councillor Pine, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, everybody. So good evening, everybody. I'm Richard Pine, and I'm representing North Richmond, which I represent with Nancy and Richard Warren. I want to talk to you about 4 issues. The first one is Homebase, which we're going to go on and debate in greater detail. But one of our responsibilities as your councillors has been to ensure that the current consultation undertaken by the Mayor, that we respond to effectively as a community. We've sent in our views, and Richard Warren will tell you about those our views. We've ensured that Richmond Council has submitted their views. I think up to 2,000 local residents have submitted their views about this extremely large and, in our view, excessively domineering development. And it's going to be important that the Sadiq Khan is fully aware of how people in this community feel about this, because we anticipate that we could get a decision on this perhaps in the next 2 to 3 months. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Secondly, we want to talk about Manor Circus. Well, thousands of people in southwest London have been disrupted by the current state of the traffic arrangements around Manor Circus. And we've been very critical of Transport for London on this. When the scheme first started, it created so much chaos that we insisted on Transport for London officers walking around with us and actually physically seeing the distress that all the people who live locally were being caused as a result of their unplanned, poorly executed traffic plans for Manor Circus. Incredibly, TfL didn't seem to realise that their other road, namely Clifford Avenue, which is only, half a mile away, at the same time was being disrupted by Thames Water. It was totally poorly planned on their part, and large numbers of people have been inconvenienced by it. So we pressed them to take a number of steps, including closing Sandokan Road and closing Castlegate, and posting all of those signs along the Kew Road, warning people there is no through byway to the 316. And we have introduced passing places into Manor Grove as well. So the current situation remains poor. It's not as bad as it was, but it remains poor. And we are very unhappy with the way that Transport for London has been carrying out this plan. Incidentally, we find them the most difficult public sector organisation to influence. You know, Transport for London are only accountable, apparently, to the Mayor of London, and that doesn't seem to work particularly well either. And I think that's an issue which we've all got to think about looking forward to the future. Thirdly, I want to talk to you about Richmond Royal. Richmond Royal is the development in Quewfoot Road, which is where the former hospital is being converted into private flats. And there has been persistent breaches of the construction agreement between the developers and Richmond Council. And so we insisted that legal action was taken against the builders there. They were fined £15,000. A week later, they went into administration, I don't think caused by £15,000 fine, but we made it very clear to Henry Construction that their blatant disregard of dust and noise and traffic management was totally unacceptable in this borough. And we have planning enforcement people, and we do use them when we need to. I think finally I want to talk about the police. We have got a very good relationship now with our 3 local policemen in North Richmond. We meet them very regularly. We meet them probably every 2 or 3 weeks. We give them sources of information and they give us sources of information. We live in a low crime area. Very few burglaries and very few assaults, but thefts from vehicles exists. And a couple of times in the course of the last year, we've had to take firm action against drug dealers. You know, drug dealers cause a huge amount of distress locally because it tends to engender a spate of petty crime in their area. And so in one house in our ward, there is now a legal notice posted that you are not allowed to access that unless you actually live there, and action is being taken to evict them. And last year we had to evict a drug dealer as well. And we will continue to do that because we want to ensure that you live in a safe and quiet and pleasant area, and drug dealers are completely contrary to that. So I think that's our situation, and thank you very much for coming along.
Councillor Vollen.
Okay.
Over to you for the next 5 minutes.
Greetings from Kew, and therefore I'm going to start with trees in the river, as I have a particular interest in that, and I chair the Kew to Chelsea River Strategy, which brings together all the boroughs along the river, and we have another committee which goes the other way towards East Molesey, which we host. But it's to say, well, we have lots of trees being planted in Kew in our streets. There's a big plan for all the trees that get planted, also ones that have to be taken down. But there's a whole tree planting and management plan along the towpath and the river. We live on the green part of the Thames, and the Port of London Authority own the riverbank. We have highways on the path, and there's the other undergrowth the other side. So it's actually quite complicated to work out who owns what, who's responsible for what, and there is now a plan on that. And people feel very strongly about trees. This week I was in Lichfield Road because there are 2 trees that are going to have to come down there, which people feel very strongly about. And our tree arboriculturalist came out, and I can assure you that they don't cut down trees lightly, and they were able to show me the evidence of the fungus and all of that. Second issue was Kew Green. We had traveller incursions several times over several years on Kew Green, which caused a lot of disruption and upset locally, and so residents came together to request that we put fencing around the green, which we have, and it fits in very nicely with the look of the whole area, and generally people are pleased. It will only act as a deterrent, but it looks good. Traffic, already mentioned, is a major issue, particularly around that Kew conservation area near the river, the South Circular, and a petition was submitted this week from residents in that area to see if they can have it as access-only area. Sandycombe Road has already been mentioned, which is generally a very busy road and difficult to live on, difficult to be a pedestrian, and so there are plans afoot to see what can be done to improve the situation on Sandycombe Road. I wanted to mention voluntary work and volunteer funding. The council has various funds available for people to make improvements locally. To name one, Active Richmond funded Live Well to do a Couch to 5K scheme where people can join and do their Couch to 5K, and various people have now completed that programme. So there are opportunities for people to do little small things as well as the big things like plant trees. The town centre in South Richmond has been mentioned. Kew Parade is our town centre in Kew. It's used by a lot of people, tourists coming to Kew Gardens, but also by our local population. And the Business and Enterprise Department have set aside some money to do a review of if there's anything we could do to improve that area. Having said that, some of it is owned by Network Rail and the TfL, so again, some of the things we'd like to change, we can't always do as quickly as we'd like to. Have I come to the end?
I think so. Thank you. We're exactly on schedule now.
I just wanted to add one or two items to our
No. Sorry.
That's fine.
Because I would like to go on to our next item on the agenda, if that's okay. There will be 4 themed areas that we're going to hear the councillors talking about, and then you will be able to respond and ask questions as well. When you want to ask a question, can I ask you to say wait for the microphone, then say your name and which ward you are from. That will just help us get an idea of where the questions are coming from. The 4 topics that we have this evening, and I will just say them, the 4 themes are home base, the future of the high streets and public spaces, and that includes policing, the toilets, street clutter, and the 3rd theme is highways improvement, which is also about road conditions, TfL works and air quality, and finally, the final theme is recycling. So I hope that gives you a sense of where the discussions are going. I'm going to ask one of the councillors to introduce each theme and then ask fellow councillors to respond, and I will also be looking at you for hands that are raised. So may I ask Councillor Warren, please, to start on home base.
Thank you. It would be very easy to speak all night about home base. It's been going on for so long. I shall try and keep this brief as possible by focusing on the situation as it is currently. The 3rd public consultation on this ended on the 26th of October. The council submitted 40 pages of objections. As ward councillors in North Richmond, we submitted 10 pages. Hundreds and hundreds of residents wrote in as well. And the MP has also written in about this to Sadiq Khan. Now, we were not happy with the way that this consultation proceeded, just as we weren't happy with the previous 2 public consultations. Both of those had to be restarted because of procedural errors. Now, we believe that errors have occurred again in this particular consultation. Therefore, we have written to the Mayor asking him to restart this consultation as well. In this instance, the problems were mainly that people were trying to submit their objections online as requested, but they were not uploaded by the system. So, we've raised this with the GLA and asked them to look into it, and also, of course, the GLA made a little bit of a mess by saying that the decision had been granted when it hadn't. It's just 2 of the many, many mistakes that have gone on over the last 4 years. So we've asked for this consultation to be restarted. We're waiting to hear back from the GLA about whether or not this will happen. But just to give you an idea of the types of objections that have been raised, a key one is that the council is just about to approve a new local plan. And this local plan follows the themes and policies of the Mayor of London's own London plan, which he updated a couple of years ago. And in that London plan, the Mayor's one, he asks councils to decide which areas can have tall buildings, because every borough must have them, he says. but also to say how tall they can be. So the Home-based Manor Road site is obviously a site where, where we already have an application for tall buildings. So the council has, in its about to be approved, we hope, local plan, said, well, we believe that the tallest building should be nothing more than 7 or 8 stories. Now, currently the developer wants to have 11 stories, and the developer also wants to have other buildings very high, 9, 10 stories and so forth. Now, the council is saying you can't have, the surrounding buildings can not be more than 6 stories. So we have followed the guidelines in the London plan, and we said this is what we believe is right for this particular site. Now, the developer, of course, is trying to say, oh, well, you know, Richmond's local plan, it's not actually approved yet. Well, actually, it is very close to that. So it does carry weight in planning law. And I have to say, we have to give a lot of credit to the planning officers at the council who really made a very strong argument about that. So we're really in a state of waiting about whether or not the consultation can be restarted, or waiting for a decision. But if there is a decision, there has to be an addendum to the last report that the GLA produced on this. So, in other words, no immediate decision is in sight. And another thing we have to bear in mind is that there is the mayoral and GLA elections in May. And in the lead up to that, there is a period of time when the mayor is not allowed to make politically contentious decisions. So, as Councillor Pine pointed out, there's not much time for the mayor to make a decision under the current circumstances. So we'll have to see what happens. But that's essentially where we're at the moment with Home-based Manor Road.
Thank you very much. Would you like to speak, Councillor?
Did you want to talk about how the position at the moment is that there will not be another open public meeting?
Okay, yes, sure. So there was a hearing, the mayor held a hearing in 2020, October 2020. He doesn't have to have another mayoral hearing on this because he's already had one. However, the council has actually asked that he does that, and we would like him to do that, if only because there have been so many procedural problems that we need to really have a good airing of all the discussions so everybody knows what's going on, and so that our views can be properly heard, because we have noticed that the GLA officers, planning officers, have made a lot of mistakes in their own reports to the mayor. And we've pointed that out, as has the council. And but ultimately, we really need him in the room, and ourselves in the room, so we can say to him, that is wrong, this is wrong, and so on. But he doesn't actually have to. He's not obliged to have another meeting, but we're asking him to have one.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor, are you happy if I ask people in the room for any questions they might like to ask regarding Homebase? There is one question, and the microphone is coming to you. Could you please say your name and which ward you're from?
Hi, my name's Angie. I know a couple of councillors here. I live directly opposite Homebase, so I am very involved. My current concern is it's linked to the work that's happening at the roundabout at the top, and I don't think that's been taken into consideration, because the current works at the top mean that they're narrowing the road because they're making the footpath bigger off the 316 into Manor Road. And so I believe that's going to cause even more traffic congestion, because we're going from 3 lanes coming in to 2 lanes coming in. And I'm really concerned that it's going to even add more congestion on top of the home-based development. And I don't really think the mayor's taken that into consideration.
Thank you. Is anybody who want to respond to that?
I can respond, yeah. So the irony of this is that those roadworks going on at the roundabout there are actually linked to this development, in the sense that the GLA have said for this development to actually happen, those roadworks need to happen. So that's the irony. But you're right, there are a lot of problems with the transport aspect of this. Another one is that the developer says the public transport accessibility and availability in North Richmond is excellent. Now we know that's nonsense because it only 3 bus services have been cut. There's no step-free access to North Sheen Station, and yes, as you say, we expect at least a couple. Well, the council expects at least 200 extra cars to come into the area as a result of the development. So we expect more congestion.
Thank you. There's one more question on home base.
Robert Smith Q. I've heard lots of objections to the home base development. I haven't heard anything really positive. I'm looking for a vision from the council as to what it actually wants. And just picking up on the issue about accessibility of North Sheen Station, has there been any discussion between the council and TfL about relocating North Sheen Station so we can access both the current main line and the underground and overground, perhaps take up space where home base currently?
Yes, so sorry.
Okay, no, you go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, the first part was about
Positive.
positive. Yes, so we do have a positive vision, absolutely. Now, right now, North Sheen doesn't have a centre of its own, really, to speak of. We feel this is an opportunity to create that, and in the Mayor's own London plan, at the very beginning of it, it talks about creating communities. So we would like the development to include community-friendly facilities, whether it be a police post or a community centre, if NHS facilities if needed, and so forth, and retail workspace. The thing is, if you want to create a place, you have to have a mix of activities: commercial, residential, leisure, community, and so forth. And there isn't that mix at the moment. It's really just a ginormous dormitory, quite frankly. And that does not really add, well, it's useful to have the housing, and we've actually argued very strongly in favour of more social housing. And that's been what the one positive thing to have evolved over the last few years, is that has actually been included. At the beginning, it wasn't even there. So, but yes, we would like it to be a bit more than just a dormitory, and those are examples of the way we would like it to evolve. So you want to
Thank you. If I'm right, you were also asking about the access in North Sheen Station, and that's something that I've been working on for a very long time. And what I can say is that finally, we've been successful in getting North Sheen Station on the Access for All list. And we recently had inquiries to see if we can shove it up the priority list. And so Network Rail and Southwest Rail are working on that together now, in light of this development and how we can get more, I'm trying to think of a diplomatic way of putting it, but to get more help from the developer in terms of making that a better station for us. In the short term, we've done things that I've got them in there to repair the stairs, for one thing, so I'll be talking about the transport part later. But yes, we have managed to get Access for All on the list for it, but there are a lot of stations on that list.
Thank you. I'd like to move us on to the next item, the next theme, which is the future of the high streets and public spaces. And I'm going to ask Councillor Varley to speak and introduce that discussion point, please.
Yes, I'll introduce the subject, but very much the future of Richmond Town Centre, the high street, is in the hands of the people, because we need engagement, and engagement is really, really important. And the council's plan at the moment is to be seeking views at the moment, but proper engagement with communities and stakeholders and bringing specialist knowledge to play will be coming in phase 1, which I believe is early next year, in the first quarter of the year. And there'll be 3 phases of consultation, and leading to the late summer, when we do hope, actually, that some of the things that will come out in the engagement will actually come into play. We don't know what they'll be yet, but our view is that we want to try and get some early results from the views that we have. I mean, I talked a bit in the opening remarks about policing, toilets, those things I mentioned, but I didn't talk about street clutter. Everyone has a view. Some people see some aspects of local transport needs and electric bikes as being a very beneficial thing. Other people see it as street clutter. And we do need to really understand what the community wants. So I'm really just starting the opening up of the conversation. I think questions from people who have come along will help us to understand, you know, where people are interested. But if I've left anything out on that, I'm sure it'll be pointed out to me.
Or why don't we ask people who are here or maybe online if there are any questions? Yeah, there's the lady here in the middle.
Hello, first of all, nice to meet you. We are new residents. We came from another country. We just less than a year rented a flat in Friarstyle Road and would like to join the community, maybe to be useful to the community. So we have like fresh look, yeah, because we are newbies here. So my question is about playgrounds, because we are planning to have kids, and we noticed that we have amazing area, really. This riverside, these trees, it's just a paradise. But the thing is that we don't have a lot of playgrounds, sport grounds, and I think that we need to raise this question, because it would be great to spend time with children in safe and good playgrounds. Thank you.
May I just ask your name? So just nice to know.
My name is Karina.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anybody here who would like to?
I'm happy to do the last few.
No? Okay.
Yes, I mean, I hear what you're saying about the playgrounds. I ran a playgroup for 30 years, so I know a little bit about kids and playgrounds and things like that. And you're right, South Richmond, Friarstyle Road is part of South Richmond. The one playground in the ward itself is the one down in the Alberts, which is quite small. It's nice, but it's getting a little tired. And I think there's some movement within the ward to have a look at that with some local moms. But that's the thing. We really like to have local people come and tell us what it is that we want. For your future children, just by the way, on the website, it'll list all the many the many playgrounds that we have. We have a really good one in Old Deer Park Gardens by Pools on the Park. That's in North Richmond. Kew, do you have one in Kew specifically? Or you do the one near Old Deer Park as well, don't you?
Yeah, we got North Sheen Recreation.
North Sheen
We've got Westerly Ware, and as Alice was just pointing out, that there is funding available for improvements, for capital improvements, to some of the playgrounds.
Yeah.
But I think what you're saying is you like new playgrounds altogether.
And somewhere close to the area,
Yeah.
to get maybe for 30 minutes or 40 minutes to get there.
I understand that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. I've got another hand here. The lady on the third row. Microphone is coming you from the other side. There you go.
Hello, my name's Cheryl Robson. I live in North Richmond, and I have actually got a proposal to develop a playground on Compass Hill. So I'm trying to bring that forward, and if you want to talk to me later, then perhaps you could get involved in that as a community project. But I'd also like to ask a question of the councillors about if there's any plans to do something to celebrate music heritage in the borough.
Would you like to speak to that, councillor?
No, I was going to actually just ask a bit of a follow-up, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, what specifically were you thinking in terms of music heritage, in terms of celebrating music heritage?
Well, obviously we have a lot of assets in the borough in terms of the music heritage that we have, but there doesn't seem to be any integrated plan or strategy to make the most of what we do have in the borough, and there's no investment in taking it forward, whereas other London boroughs are doing things to celebrate their music heritage and are obviously reaping the benefits of tourism coming to their boroughs to enjoy that. And so it seems a huge waste to me that we're doing nothing here to celebrate our vast music heritage, not only in Eel Pie Island, but also the Crawdaddy Club and the numerous venues that have existed over the years, which have been the sort of, the place where a lot of music legends actually started.
Okay, Councillor Farley?
I haven't got the answer, but what I would say is that we'd be very open to listening to what you want to do and your input into the plan for Richmond Town Centre, because now is the time for re-raising this. And I know, Cheryl, that you have a track record of delivering on projects such as Virginia Woolf statue on the riverfront, and your drive and your energy would be much appreciated, particularly on the music tourism aspect, because I know that's a passion for you. And I've yet to see your plans for Compass Hill, but I'm looking forward to them.
Thank you.
Something to that.
Would you?
Just to add a little something to that answer as well, as if you like, at the end of it, come down to us, because we have a Visit Richmond officer, Angela Ivy, and she does work on things like music tours. So see me afterwards and I'll talk to you more about it.
Sorry, one moment. If the microphone comes to you, then you can speak. Is that all right? Yes, please.
Yeah, perfect woman.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Apologies. My name is Lorinda Frank. I'm the head of High Streets at the council, and Visit Richmond falls within my remit. The arts department at the council actually has music. It's quite central to their strategy at the moment. And Visit Richmond is in the process of creating a strategy for tourism in Richmond for the next 5 years. They had several meetings with the Visit Richmond partners, and the theme that came forward as something this strategy should centre on for the next 5 years was music. And exactly what you've just talked about, the music heritage of the borough, how to pull it all together, steering groups to take it forward. We're hoping for the strategy to go to committee in January, the January-February cycle, and after that we will get everyone together who's interested in this for us to see how to take this forward.
Thank you. Councillor Vasilova.
I just had one small addition to make. I think you're very right, and I would like to defer to your expertise, so I echo the points that please come to us to help us develop the strategy. But I just wanted to say that I have seen in Richmond Town Centre, and our ward is quite small, there have been recently more venues, pubs and bars that are trialling having, say, one night a week, one night a month or 2 nights a month doing live music, and I think that's an evidence that there is the enthusiasm, the appetite and the need for it, and it's definitely something that's on the rise, I think. So we would love your expertise on how to take it forward.
I want to take one more question on this topic before we move on. Yes, please.
I'm Peter Willan. I live in the South Ward in Richmond. I do chair the Richmond Music Hub, and we have 5,000 kids that we teach out of the 30,000 kids in the borough. And I've just been involved in merging a joint venture with 6 other boroughs, which we're being asked to do by the government and the Arts Council, and we will have 250,000 children and 500 schools. And there is a huge amount of thought about music, and I'd be very much happy to talk about it. And one thing we've been looking for, we really do need facilities. We do not have a decent, sensible venue for the kids. And I'm not saying we do this, and the council, I'm sure, would throw their arms up in despair when we hear that Wimbledon is aiming to raise 200 million for a performance centre, and I'm not suggesting we do anything like that. But we really do need, and I've looked at all the spaces around the borough, the capacity, the stage area and everything else, we do not have it. I'd be very happy. Nobody's approached me from the council on the strategy or the Richmond Music Hub. And we do put on 20 concerts a year.
Thank you, but it sounds like there are lots more discussions to be had. We have got one question from online.
We've got 18 people watching now.
Okay.
So
Welcome, everyone.
This question is from Stephen Speak.
He's here.
Oh, you want to just answer? So what work is the council doing now to plan for the transport requirements arising from the proposed large developments at Kew Retail, Stag Brewery and Homebase?
Right, now that's a nice meaty question. Who would like to start on that one? Who's not had a chance really? Go on then, Councillor. You start.
Okay, well, I thought we were still on town centre. I have to do a major shift here. Do we have any town centre specific questions before I go on to this? Because it's the next topic is the highways thing. Oh, okay, so yeah.
I think you can go to
Hi,
highways.
we're talking about highways now. So we're changing our theme. The thing that what I wanted to talk about basically is more some general things, and then I'll get to your specific question, which will probably have to remind me what it was. Is that the general thing is for people to know is that, of course, we do have our website, and there on that we'll tell you what our highway improvement schedule is. So if you're wondering, is my street going to have be repaved at some point, or the pavement's going to be replaced, you can go online and you can look at that. The other thing that's that we're doing is that you can self-report. Hello, this is our council leader, Gareth Roberts here, by the way. You can also self-report if you've got potholes or there's a pavement that you think has a trip hazard. You can also report those things online. If you're not getting a response, that's when you contact us and we will help you from there. So that is a couple of things that I wanted to say. I think I've touched on already some of the improvements to North Sheen Station and what we're hoping to achieve. I would love to see that the step-free access at North Sheen Station at some point, although I have to say for myself right now, I'll just settle for better access because right now has anyone here used North Sheen Station recently? Yeah. How many of you have felt safe going down those stairs? Nobody feels safe going down those stairs. And I think that's what we're trying to do. If nothing else, get an improvement there. And part of that is keeping on people to repair them. And we just saw some people repairing them there in the last couple of weeks. I did mention Access for All. We are on the list. It took 5 years of battling, but we're on the list now at least. And we've had people come and ask us for more information so we can be shoved up that list. If you don't know what Access for All is, what it is, it's a program that is paid for by Southwest Rail, which provides improvements to a station, allowing people who need step-free access, whether it's because they're in a wheelchair or have heavy luggage or have a pram, any of those things, so that they can be able to access the station. Why is that important? From my point of view, it's important because it's a Zone 3 station. It is £400 a year cheaper to start your journey going into London from North Sheen than it is if you start from Richmond Station. So if you're commuting, it's very much cheaper to start from North Sheen, and that's why the access for all is so important. We do have quarterly meetings with our transport partners, and the transport partners include the bus, all the bus companies, and we have TfL there, and we have Network Rail and Southwest Rail, and we talk to them about our priorities within our councils, within our council wards, and all wards are invited, and we always make our representations through that point. We've had some pretty good results from that in terms of getting the whole idea of electric buses going through Richmond Town Centre. That came off of one of these meetings. So there are things that happen and that we're able to do from that. I always have to put in a community rail partnership. We have a community rail partnership that's just paid for by Southwest Rail. And what that does is actually gets Southwest Rail interfacing directly with residents in some cases. If you happen to be in Godalming, say, you've adopted your local station and you put flowers on it or pictures, and we're trying to do that for North Sheen Station specifically to get it adopted and just make it a more pleasant place to start and end your journey, no matter what time of day or night that is. We are rolling out lamppost EV chargers across the borough and certainly across our 3 wards, and I'm sure people will want to ask questions about that. And now the elephant in the room is the A316, and why are we doing this, and how did this come about? And we'd like to pretend that this was a brand new plan, but it's not. The first time I saw this plan was in 2018. Stephen, you probably saw it even before that, didn't you? Yeah. It's been rumbling on. It's finally reached a point where it had to be done because the integrity of the bridge itself was under threat. So it is, in fact, a railway bridge. I don't know if people know that. You just think it's a roundabout, but it's a railway bridge, and we couldn't risk it falling onto the tracks. And so that's why it was imperative that this start now. Could they have done a better job? Oh, yes, they could have done a much better job. And the number of people we spoke to about that. I'm really proud and pleased and so grateful to our leader, and we have Councillor Mansfield here, who's vice chair of the Transport Committee. I think it was October 28th, something like that. Yeah, October 28th, we had a public consultation on the works that were being done there. And there was over 800 people on that call. And there were people, we had representatives from TfL, from the railways, obviously our transport engineers, but it goes back to TfL answers to TfL and to the mayor. And we can stamp our little feet as much as we like, and it's very hard to get traction with them, but we do. And they did, and they have made amendments. One of the major wins is they now work longer hours. Sadly, we did have, I like to think of it as the Manor Circus water feature, where the water pipe was hit, and if they hadn't put the digger there, it would have been about 15 feet in the air because it was water under pressure. And for 1 week, they had to put a digger over the top and let the water run away because it took that long to get Thames Water's attention. And I've been told it's time for you to ask me questions. I wanted to give you a good rundown, sorry.
Yes, I just wanted to add on the broader question about what happens if Homebase gets approval, and at about the same time the Mortlake Brewery gets approval, and about the same time the Barnes Hospital site gets approval. We've then got potentially severe problems from the point of view of traffic and the movement, particularly of construction vehicles. So on the Richmond Royal site, which is in Quefoot Road, accessible only by narrow terrace streets, this led to great difficulty. But with any major plan, with any major construction project, the developer has to agree a construction management plan with the council. And we have to be sure that they are going to have thought through issues, particularly like vehicle access and lorry access and dust and water and working hours and things of that kind. And that will be a high priority for the council to do as soon as we know which developments are going to go ahead and, broadly speaking, when they will go ahead. The complexity, I think, is that, you know, with the case of Homebase, I think the only way they can probably access that site is probably directly from 316. We'll see what they come forward with by way of a plan. But you folks who live in Manor Road and Manor Grove, there is no way that we're going to permit construction lorries to go down those roads. They'll be hopelessly stuck, and it will be totally intolerable for you. And one of the reasons I banged on about Richmond Royal is that our planning enforcement people will take action against these people, and in extreme circumstances can serve a stop notice to actually require development to stop until these people adhere to their construction plans. So this will be a very important issue, and we as your local councillors will need to let you know what is proposed. We'll have to come and talk to you about what is practicable. And frankly, TfL is going to have to be a darn sight more responsive in how they're going to manage the 316 to permit these vehicles to access the site without causing major disruption to people who live locally.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor West.
Thank you. I was just going to say, very small aside, but I know in some of our representations to some of the planning applications, particularly around Mortlake Brewery, we also had a look at other ways that they could bring some of the construction in and out. So I know representations were made at planning committee before it went to the mayor around could we use the river? Is there anything we could do to use the river to try and ease some of the congestion in terms of construction traffic? Once it went to the GLA, I'm not entirely sure how seriously that was looked into, but that was something that we were also trying to alleviate, thinking of ways, if these things go ahead, how can we try and alleviate some of these issues in terms of some of the things we have around our area? Because obviously some of these construction sites have, you know, a railway, a river, a massive road, they're sort of hemmed in, and we've been looking at ways we can try and ease some of the issues, but I don't think, well, I know that didn't go ahead with the Mortlake Brewery site, especially when it went to the GLA, but there were ways we were trying to look at to try and manage the situation using different methods.
Thank you. That's certainly an interesting one, isn't it? Using the river. A question here. Yes, please.
Adrian from North Richmond. Just to pick up the point about the river, I lived in East London, just next door to this, what has become the super sewer. It started work the day I moved in. There was a children's school just behind where the development was, and they insisted that the river was used. So the water, Thames Water, this is going to go back at least 7 or 8 years. So there is a precedent you can press the GLA on using the river for transporting materials.
Well, I couldn't agree more with that as an idea. I think one of the things that came back as a sort of half answer was obviously the tidal, or the low and high tide being quite so different between the extreme, thank you, that's a good word, and how you would get it on.
Yeah. Are there any other questions about highways improvements? Yes, please. Yeah, the microphone is there for you.
Okay, thank you. My name's Isabel Staveley. I live in Chiltern Road in Kew. A couple of things to mention. I sense your fury at this whole Manor Road home base thing. I am astounded that the developer was not forced to actually have half that stuff from TfL on their site as storage, because that whole manor circus could have been handled so much better if the storage of some of that stuff could have been on an empty, derelict home-based site. It's scandalous that you asked for it and it was refused. And I think it's at that point that that developer lost an awful lot of support from anybody. That's beside the point. Going back to access for all at North Sheen's a dive. And if you can do anything to improve it, and the developer should be encouraged perhaps to, if we're trying to create a community, that the station be moved within the housing. I am shocked that someone is considering 11 stories. I think even 7 stories for that area is much too high. The other aspect I wanted to say was it's all very well talking about access for all at North Sheen, I've lived for 31 years here, and there is still no lift at Kew. Kew is a national heritage. It's a World Heritage Centre. We haven't even got a lift there. Do you know what they tell people to do? Stay on and stay on until Richmond, change, or stay on the tube and come back the other way. Seriously? Do we want people to just hang about, just go a little bit further? What is the problem? Get a lift. Why do you want mothers with babies to go up and all the way round, all the way over the top? Oh yes, don't worry, just potter around there.
May I ask Councillor Vollen to respond to that? Thank you, thank you.
I mean, we can do it together.
Okay, we'll do it together. May, you're sitting together.
1, 2, 3,
there.
go. So both us and the Kew Society have asked for lifts at Kew Station. And I think the number we were first quoted was something like 10 million. It will cost 10 million just to put a lift in. And that is our biggest struggle at the moment, is trying to get anyone to stump up 10 million for a lift.
You get a lot of excuses. It's somebody's bridge. Oh no, that's their bridge.
Yes.
Someone else's railway. I mean, get on with
Yes.
it.
No. So I've been to the last 2 transport committees by chance, and there is money set aside to do up the Henrique Bridge. So my question is, well, why hasn't this been spent? Because it's passed from month to month and year to year. And the answer is that Network Rail want to charge us to spend our money to do up their bridge. And the amount of money that they want to charge us to do this is more or as much as the amount of money we've got to spend. And that is why it's got stuck. However, Gareth has just left. But I raised it again last month or last week. He is going to try and raise it to the highest possible echelons with a threat that will go to the press if you don't resolve this issue. So, and we do have the chair of Network Rail in our borough, but we have to be careful not to sort of abuse that. But yeah, absolutely. And the state of the underpass at Kew Garden Station looks like somebody's bad bathroom job. I was just saying, Gareth, that you were going to pick up the issue of the Henrique Bridge at Kew Gardens. Yeah.
Good.
It really is outrageous.
Thank you. I need to move on in time.
Touch me later. It's
Absolutely. Good idea to
Touch me later.
talk to people later. I just want to take one more question, if there is one more, on highways. Oh, yeah. May I ask Councillor Varley? After? Okay, that's fine.
You read out my online question, but the response was about construction management. The real concern is when these developments, and we include Kew Retail Park in that, so we've got Kew Retail Park, we've got the Stag Brewery, we've got Home Base, we've got Barnes Hospital. There's an awful lot of stuff that is going to be using that corridor. And my question was, what is the council doing right now to plan for that? And it's not good enough to say that it depends on the planning permission being granted. We need to know what the situation is now in terms of people moving around, where they want to go, where they started from. That's the sort of surveys that should be being conducted right now.
Would you come? No? Yes, please.
As I understand it, and I'm not a very experienced councillor, but I've been to the, it is called the Independent Scrutiny Committee for the Kew Retail Park, which is going through another iteration, so it hasn't actually come out to consultation. But as I understand it, each planning application has to be considered in isolation and not in relation to all the other ones around it, which in itself is a problem, but legally that is the case. So you have to say, Mortlake Brewery exists here, what's the traffic impact here, what's the impact at Retail Park, it isn't what happens if both of them come together, although we're all very aware, we all go round Chalkers Corner, etc., very familiar with the traffic issues. So that is a kind of structural and I think legal planning issue. But what the developers do have to do is present a traffic plan. They have to show the cycle routes, the walking routes, and all of that. And the bottom line is, from me looking at it, we just have to more and more encourage people out of cars and make cycling more safety, pedestrian access to stations, step-free access, etc. That would be my own personal take on it, but in answer to your legal question, that's the thing.
I promised Councillor Varley.
I just wanted to take a bit of the conversation back to something that was raised by Councillor Baldwin about transport in the borough. And I get a reasonable number of emails about lamppost charging, which is something which actually, as a borough, we're doing a great job of implementing. We've got another, I think it's 500 going plus lamppost charges being implemented across the borough in the current year, which is great. But the other part of the post bag is about the frustrations that people have. And I just want to say it to the room that we hear these frustrations about it's great to have lamppost charges, but it's very difficult to use them because you can't park next to them as a right, and they sometimes are in awkward places on the street. So I want to say we've heard that. It didn't come up specifically from the audience, but I've had a significant mailbag on the subject, and I will be taking that up myself with the transport side of things to see how we can better utilise our lampposts for charging.
Thank you.
Can I just say, yes, listening to the questioner about transport and the impacts of all of these major developments, that I think a high degree of thinking on a strategic level is required. There are lots of potential answers, I guess, and some of them have already been mentioned. But I think we definitely do need to think about that at that kind of level, at a transport strategy level.
Right, I'm just handing the microphone back to Councillor.
Hi. For those who don't know, Stephen here used to be a councillor here in North Richmond and was on transport. So he's very well aware of all of these things. And you know how difficult it is because you sat in the chair, Stephen. So, and what I'm going to say to you is probably the best thing, and you know this better than anyone, is to go and speak at a transport meeting. You know Councillor Amon, you know Councillor Mansfield here, who is the thing, and to really, because we'd like to hear your ideas of what you think would be good ideas, and call on your experience. I'd be lying if I said I know what the answer to all of those integrated questions are, because I haven't sat on transport for a year now, but I do happen to know as far as home base is concerned. When I question them, they think everything's going to come off the M4 and the M3, go up the 316 and hang a right. Well, we know that's not going to work terribly well, don't we? So I think, if you'd like, we can take that offline and really talk about it. But you sat there, you know what we're talking about, and you know how difficult that is. And I appreciate you bringing up the question in the first place, because you're right, it needs more.
It's quite clear there's an awful lot of knowledge, not here, just with the councillors, but also with you, and it's wonderful. Thank you for sharing those questions. Have I got one question from online before we move on to the next topic? No, not another one, is it?
This is from Martin Keaton. So there's been a great improvement in Sandycombe Road as traffic has been reduced by the roadworks at the south end. How can this improvement be made permanent?
Yes, please.
Yes, we'd actually already come up with some proposals about how to improve Sandycombe Road, which we had already a planned meeting with the Sandycombe Road Residents Group, and hey presto, the roundabout had been shut off Sandycombe Road, and a lot of people were saying, well, why can't we make this permanent? And so the plan of the transport officers is once the sort of circulation improves more, we need to measure what the impact of that is on other roads, because often if you close off one road or close off a road one way, it backs up somewhere else. So a bit like the travellers on Kew Green who then moved to Richmond Green. It's sort of like, so we just have to be careful that we don't move a problem from one area to another. And the other issue is the bus route that goes down there. But I would hope that we can find a solution and a better improvement. We can't promise that we will retain that, but we're looking into it.
Thank you. I would like to move on to the next topic, if I may, one that is very close to my heart, recycling.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you to speak and introduce that, but only for a very short introduction, if that's okay.
Right, I'm sorry I didn't have
Because I'd like
reputation
to have lots of time for questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, recycling, waste and recycling, we're pretty good in the borough. We're a fairly good bunch of recyclers. The targets are pretty tough to recycle 50% of domestic waste. We're not quite there yet, but certainly there's been a reduction in waste thrown away in general. So how do you increase recycling? Well, obviously you want to reduce the waste that's going into the, if it's a landfill, it's not landfill with us, but it's the equivalent domestic residual waste. So how do we do that? There has been some improvement in food waste collection, and that's rolling out across the borough. It could be better for people who live in flats. Not everyone has access to that service yet, and there are various reasons for that, and one of them is that management agents or landlords may not agree to it, and they have to be persuaded by their tenants essentially to do that. So that's one problem there. Apart from that, Serco contract is okay. Everyone complains about Serco, and there are lots of missed collections, and they get things wrong, but they're not doing horrendously at the moment. I'm sure that will come out in the wash. Garden waste sack collection, that's a new way of doing things, so that garden waste can be collected either by booking a collection, or teams will pick up your garden waste bagged up. That's really in a nutshell.
Right, why don't we see if there are any questions about this? One hand up straight away.
I'm sorry, I'm quite mouthy, and I'm very sorry. My name's Isabel Stavely, I live in Kew. In terms of, oh yes, the new developments that this gentleman here was talking about, these 4 or 5, what are the preconditions in terms of, if we can't get them in flats because landlords don't agree, then how are we trying to preempt that in all these new buildings, the home base development, the retail park? How are we getting in there in the ground floor? You do realise you will need to have extra storage down here for food waste. Are we getting in there?
Let's get an answer to that question.
Yes, and I think I can answer that question. I'm the Deputy Chair of the Planning Committee, and one of the things we do insist for all new developments that there are appropriate receptacles for recycling, and that has to be built into the design of all new buildings. So over a period of time, that will help improve the recycling rate. But just to build on what Chaz has said, in our ward we have Sheen Court. Sheen Court has 200 flats. It's on the Upper Richmond Road West. We approached the management committee because a couple of people wrote to us saying, can we have recycling facilities? The management committee said, no, there's no need for it at all. So we then had to go around and knock on the doors of all 200 flats and get them to sign a petition and actually demonstrate to the management committee that the vast majority of people there wanted to do their bit. So sometimes with management committees, you simply have to shame them into action by getting the tenants and the residents to actually demonstrate that there is that demand for that. I wanted to say one thing though about food waste. I live in a long road. We have 180 houses in our road. 178 properties out of 180 recycle. But when I walk up and down and look at food waste, only about a quarter of those people do food waste. And I used to do it, but then a squirrel keeps on gnawing at the top of the food waste. I went along and put my food waste in a year ago, and a rat shot outside of it, so, through the hole. So I was so terrified by that, I don't actually do food waste. So one of the things the council has to do is the council has to work on having more rodent-proof food waste to permit us, to encourage us to do our bit from a food waste point of view as well.
Thank you, Councillor.
I think half to pick up on Richard's point, I think it's about trying to make everything as easy as, it's about trying to make everything as easy as possible for people in order to make this the easiest option, as frustrating as that can sometimes be, I appreciate. But obviously one of the sort of projects that we're working on are mega skips around the borough, and I believe that there is a website link, but that all gets sorted as well. So obviously I appreciate people sometimes kind of keep stuff, like it might be garden waste, it might be sort of throwing out stuff from the shed, especially this time of year as we kind of get into Christmas and people think, oh, I better have a bit of a clean up before the family come, and oh, I don't really want that chair anymore or whatever. But these mega skips all get sorted and they'll be dotted around the borough. There will be a link on the council website to say where the next mega skip is going to be and when it's going to be and how long it's going to be there for. But that's also quite a handy way of trying to increase recycling and increase sort of support for residents to make it as easy as possible so they don't necessarily always have to schlep to the nearest recycling centre.
Thank you. I'm learning a lot here, actually, things that I didn't know. This council website, I'm going to be studying it tonight. Yes, please, Councillor Varley.
Yeah, well, recycling is also only effective if people know what items can be recycled in what manner. Otherwise, we get contaminated recycling, and that actually doesn't work at all. If anyone's interested, I had produced a specialist poster for hard to recycle items, which I'm told by the officers here tonight, if you put your names, you make a tick or whatever against your name on the registration as you came in. If you'd like that emailed to you, so you know how to recycle difficult things, like some of the difficult bags or toothbrushes or toothpaste tubes, all these things which don't normally go into traditional recycling, then that poster can be sent directly to you to aid distribution of that knowledge.
Thank you. That's another very helpful tip, and I definitely want to have that email. Thank you.
And this is a different way of thinking about recycling. There are things like the Richmond Furniture Scheme, who will actually come to your home and take furniture items away, and then either give them, what they do is refurbish them, give them to people in need, or they're sold at very low price for people who are looking for new furniture and can't afford new.
Absolutely. Highly commended. Yes, please.
Just going on the items that are difficult to recycle, you'll quite often pick up an item you bought from the supermarket and it says the tray can be recycled but the top can't, take it to the store. Is there any interaction with the major stores to make that more obvious? Because I've never seen anything in the stores I go to say bring your recycling here.
Well, you're absolutely right. There's no publicity given by the stores that they can do that. And in fact, Amazon Fresh next to Richmond Station, they used to provide some recycling for difficult to recycle items of the type that, the lids perhaps that wouldn't normally go. And when I went in to ask them why they don't seem to provide that service anymore, they just said, oh, too many people were using it. But essentially, you're right. Supermarkets, larger supermarkets, will accept a wide range of things that fall into the hard to recycle category. But get the leaflet. Oh, sorry, the poster.
Thank you. Councillor?
It's sort of slightly left field point, but sort of thinking about as we're going into other things that can be recycled. But I think perhaps there can be also a public awareness campaign, sort of looking at the boss, around other ways to recycle. So things like clothing are massively wasteful, especially now with sort of fast fashion. And how cheap things can be. And actually I've recently, I don't know whether I can name a company, but having recently just got into Vinted online, that's a really good way to recycle clothes. And actually there should be kind of like a public awareness campaign of how we can recycle things that we would ordinarily go, oh, do you know what, I don't really like those trainers anymore, but I can't necessarily pop to a charity shop really easily. Actually, all these sorts of things can be done online. They send you bags, they can really easily, you can just put it in the post, it's so easy. And I think actually we need to be kind of promoting more of that sort of stuff as well, because I think, again, public awareness, but also, again, making things easy for people to do.
Would it be a good idea to have that on the council website, to say, here is where you go if you want to recycle X, Y, and said, ideally we would recycle all disposable items, wouldn't we?
Thank you. That's great. Am I allowed to add one thing that we do? We run a parent and toddler group in one of our churches. We organise swap mornings, baby clothes. You know, they're not worn for very long. We swap books. We swap. It's just easy way of recycling. Doesn't mean cost any money. It's nice and easy, and I love it because I get loads more books. One tiny little thing, and then I want to open the floor for questions.
And something that should be on that website is that people shouldn't landfill, because everything, even rag bags, get minced up into emergency blankets, and goodness knows we need a lot of those at the moment, looking at the world. So nothing should ever go into the landfill. All those rags, charity shops get paid for stuff that's really awful. They get paid per kilo, so nothing should go to waste.
Thank you very much. The two questions from online, so let's go to those.
This is an anonymous question, no name to it. So, can the recycling box system be changed to bags, like Wandsworth and Kensington and Chelsea? The boxes cause street clutter and litter on the streets. Bags would avoid these issues, for example, street clutter, room litter from the wind.
Well, go on.
I'm not going to lie, I have a certain amount of sympathy for that, having tripped over one in the dark the other day. So I do have a lot of sympathy with that. But we did previously have bags, and once they're empty, they blow all around. So that's a problem. But I think it is something that's constantly being thought of and under review by our environment committee, is what are better ways and ways that we can do this, going back to rodent thing. So I think if I would love whomever wrote that, if you got some ideas or you've seen something somewhere. I saw fox-proof bags in Cornwall recently, and another one that was a seagull-proof, you know. Maybe we should, please, by all means, write to us, send it in, and we can look at it. Councillor Warren.
Thank you. Yes, just one other thing about the bags, as Councillor Baldwin said, is we had used that previously. And another problem with it is that they easily rip just through wear and tear. It doesn't even need a fox or a rat to go at it. They just fall apart eventually.
Thank you. And there was one other question.
Another question from Martin Keane. Weekly doorstop collections, including glass and plastic, but there are no skips for them at Rivermead Recycling, who treat it as landfill. Why the inconsistency?
Who can answer that one? No. Silence.
We're talking about the recycling.
Yes, please.
I was going to say, given sort of none of us have jumped up, that might be a question that we have to take away and find out a little bit more about before we.
Good, and that's an honest answer. That's a question that needs to be addressed elsewhere. Or Councillor Pine.
Well, to be honest, I don't think the questioner is right. I went to Townmead only last week. I go there about every 5 or 6 weeks. And there are provision, if you want to recycle plastic and glass at that site. I mean, you know, you don't have a huge amount of it because most people are coming there for green waste and metal and wood and things of that sort. But I think the questioner is incorrect. It is available. And incidentally, nobody's been mentioning this, but since we've moved to a booked time for going to Townmead, I think that system seems to me to be working a great deal better than the old system where people just queued up, and sometimes you were in a queue for half an hour and sometimes you went straight in. So we don't want to change that system, and we are finding that it's working better, and the recycling rate, the recycling efficiency at Townmead is improving slightly.
Thank you. I'd like to open the floor for questions that you may have come with on topics that have not yet been discussed. You're all going very quiet. Yes, please. I'm glad to have another question. Sorry.
Can anybody?
Yeah, it is on, if you hold it close enough.
Can you say anything about Heathrow? Because on the 31st of July, Heathrow submitted 200 new options for all our flight paths, which are going to whittle down. And I would say, for those that don't know, by the way, I'm Peter Wool and I chair the Richmond Heathrow campaign. The takeoffs to the east from the northern runway, which were previously always banned by the Cranford Agreement, which is no longer, that means the planes will be coming off the northern runway, curving around south over us, possibly. So that's one question. The other one is were there any views on night flights? Because I have to give a little presentation to Heathrow next week and the DFT and others on night flights. And anybody who wants me to say anything, I'd be very happy to pass the messages on.
Yes, Councillor, please.
Well, I have two small things to do. First of all is an appeal to everyone, every resident. Please, please log as many complaints with Heathrow as you can, even if you just get the standard response, because then it helps us fight the case and demonstrate that there is vigorous opposition against most of the things Heathrow proposes. On night flights, I would say that my impression living under one of the flight paths is that very often they don't even abide by their current quote. There's late flights coming and going, so I have kind of lost all confidence in their ability to manage any further increase in what they already have.
Thank you. Councillor.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, obviously as council and us as councillors have opposed the third runway for a long time, for over 40 years, and obviously we worked with interested groups to take it to the Court of Appeals, and I know our MPs are working against the extended night. I say extended night flights because Pauline is absolutely right. I think they are already straying into their sort of non-designated time, and I think really to highlight Paulina's point of every time you have an issue, every time you see a flight go over after the designated time, like absolutely log it, because I think we need more and more things to be able to go, stop, you are now encroaching on, it's sort of that pushing the boundaries. There's a lot of sort of pushing the boundaries of, oh, it's all right, an extra 10 minutes here and there, and pretty soon all of a sudden you've basically got night flights and actually that wasn't what was agreed. So I think really, really, really hammering the point of please just put in anytime you see a plane, you know, midnight or whatever, please write to Heathrow, you know, feel free to copy any councillors, because we need more things that we can kind of go, no, come on, we've had enough. And they just keep on pushing the boundaries.
Thank you. May I just go back to you and then...
Again, it's a very short point. From my understanding, and if my understanding is correct, there's currently review in some European airports, but one of the big issues is that aviation has moved to precision-based flights, which are made to optimize fuel cost, etc., but take very little account of the impact that it takes on residents, and we know Heathrow tends to interpret noise disruption problems very creatively. So that is an issue, however, that will have to struggle a lot, because I think it's an aviation or worldwide issue, but if you can pass that on, that it's not really working great, that would be, it needs a rethink in general, because I understand how it's optimized for the technology and the travel path, but it is completely and utterly works against residents.
Councillor.
Yes, I've lived in this borough now for 35 years, and I remember when I first moved in, and I bought a house in Kingsway and Mortlake, and I remember the owner said to me, oh, you'll get used to the planes, you know, you'll get used to them. After a few months, you won't hear them. Well, 35 years later, at 4:35 each morning, I get woken up from that flight from Hong Kong. And then 3 minutes later, the second flight from Hong Kong flies over my house at 4:38. And it wakes me up every single morning. So, you know, more power to your elbow. If you can stop those Hong Kong flights and just ensure that the earliest flights arrive at 6 o'clock, I would be absolutely thrilled. And so would many thousands of other people around
The councillor was first, and then Nancy. Yeah.
And just finally, before I forget, it is a small point, but I accept the argument that technology is moving on and some airplanes are technically getting quieter, but they're also getting bigger. And from my experience, having having to clean my balcony chairs and table, they are either flying lower or they're just getting dirtier. So that argument again doesn't hold water if the objective decline in noisiness of the aircraft is then offset by size or frequency or altitude.
Your question was about what is the council doing? The council still has somebody on, and oh my gosh, my mind's gone blank. Which councillor is on the third runway? Sorry? Phil Giesler. Councillor Phil Giesler is on that. Oh my goodness, I'm getting older, aren't I? Just completely went out of my mind. So yes, so we're still working on that. We still have representation on that. So if you want to talk to Councillor Giesler as well, that's probably a good idea.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? Yes, I've got a hand up here.
Hello, Martin from South Richmond Ward. I've got a question about this actual event. This event seems to only be happening once a year, and we're probably about a third capacity. But I can tell you exactly why that is, because Richmond Council doesn't bother to promote it. So there is nothing on the neighbourhood notice board whatsoever about this event, which I find extraordinary. There's nothing in Sarah Olney's weekly newsletter, I've looked back, not been mentioned. So I think that's a real issue, and I'm just wondering why that is. But I'm going to make a related point, coming back to our earlier conversation about the town centre improvements. So the council have spent £43,000 of our money on a phase 1 consultation, which is due. How many people knew about that phase 1 consultation? Put your hand up, please. Not many. And that's the same reason, because there was nothing on the Richmond neighbourhood notice board. There were no leafleting of anything. It was all purely online. I went to both of those Zoom calls, and there were a total of less than 10 people between 2 Zoom calls, including a lady from Richmond, Virginia, who was there by accident, which was very amusing, but, you know, not really the way to do it. So, you know, considering that the Richmond, as Nancy will know, you've just approved a £125,000 budget for phase 2, which will happen next year, is anybody going to know about this?
I think we're going to have one of...
Hi, I'm Councillor Mansfield, and I'm working on the Richmond Town Centre project. I don't think that's fair. I don't think it has only been digital communication, but it has been quite targeted communication, because we've done an awful lot of engagement over the last couple of years with a lot of people. We've got a lot of feedback, and we're still listening to that feedback. What this particular piece has done has been trying to get into the communities and have very much what's called qualitative information from groups of people that we don't usually reach. So we've been going into schools, we've been going into social housing, we've been going to places where people are. We've been standing outside Richmond Station, we've been going to some of the fairs that are there, we've been going to we've gone down to Richmond Green on Saturday afternoon to talk to the people who are spending time there. So we do have it online, and we do have surveys coming in, but this is not in isolation, and this is trying to get more in-depth, targeted engagement from people that we quite often don't hear, so that we can build the right thing and understand what people really want from the town centre. It's not got no feedback. We've had a huge number of stakeholders involved, and we've had a huge number of feedback in sessions that we've been running in talking with people.
Yeah, there's lots of people here that didn't put their hand up, just so you know.
I know.
But there are also a number of people.
There's also a number of people who have responded, and anyone can still respond. If you want to go onto the website and onto the Richmond website, you can fill in the survey. And it's still open at the moment for you to continue to give feedback. But that is not the primary way we are getting the feedback. The primary way is through talking to people in the places that they spend time, trying to understand in detail what they like about Richmond Town Centre, what they don't like about it, and what they'd like to see done, because you don't get that from online surveys at the same level of detail.
Thank you. I've got a couple of responses. This clearly has touched a nerve here straight in front of me. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Kieran Vagawal, I'm Head of Community and Partnerships, so I'm Head of Service that run these community engagement events in partnership with Councillor Baldwin. So just to say, this is a relaunch. of community conversations across the borough. So we're aiming to get across the whole borough as quickly as we can. We've obviously prioritised these 3 awards to take place because we wanted to make sure there's something that took place before Christmas and we didn't wait too long. So just in terms of promoting the event, we actually had 79 people that had registered for the event. So we use Eventbrite to register. There is around 53 from Q Ward and 26 from North South Richmond Ward. We've had posters and leaflets up in the libraries as well, and I appreciate your point around it all being digital, but certainly not something that we do. We do look at leaflets and posters and getting out there. I think as we roll out these community conversations, and again, very much so, in every one we have, we look at how we can improve more and more. Hopefully we'll have a little bit more lead-in time for the ones coming up over the year. I appreciate your point about once a year, but that's something obviously we'll get feedback from members and from residents and constantly look at how we can improve this. But we have heavily promoted this event as much as we can in the period of time that we've had.
Sorry, Kieran, do you mind if I just add on to the end of that? Sorry, I'm abusing my power of holding the microphone, so sorry about that.
Ah, okay.
I'm Olivia, I also work for I'm an engagement officer for Richmond Council. And equally on top of everything that Kieran has just said, if you can identify and you have groups that you want to share with us that are missing out, then I'd actually really be grateful for you to share those with me. If you know that there are loopholes or if there are blank spots, I would love to know about it so that we can then incorporate that.
Thank you. I really want to hear some more questions from the floor.
I really need to just say one more thing. I honestly need to say one last thing about it.
Well,
okay, thank you. Very quickly. Okay, the one thing, and this is just one form of community engagement. All of us have surgeries. You can contact us in many different ways. We have bigger whole borough ones. We have particular topic ones. There are many, many, many ways to engage. It is a relaunch. We are starting this anew. There will be more. But it's not the only time you get to talk to your councillor. You pick up the phone, you can talk to us. So I think that's a really important point to make.
Thank you. Councillor.
I fear that Nancy's going to come for me if I say this, so sorry, Nancy. I think you raise a fair point in terms of obviously the number of people who have arrived this evening, and obviously as Nancy and our officers have said, it's obviously a relaunch and we're looking to roll out more and we're looking to obviously advertise more. But I think if you have any ways that you think, like your notice board point is a really fair point, and I think we should acknowledge that. I'd like us all to kind of acknowledge that he has a point. And that was my one, sorry, to go against the panel.
Thank you. You and I are going to talk more about this because we have gone to a lot of trouble. I'm sorry.
It's okay. But there was one lady who was desperate to ask a question as well.
I didn't have a question as much as a comment.
You may make a comment as well.
Just again on the high street and just the importance.
I can't hear you. Can you hold the microphone
just on the high street and what the gentleman said about numbers, etc., and campaigning and presence. You know, we do have a high street. We have a lot of empty buildings, and this is an important subject, not just for Richmond. I think it's an important subject throughout the land for lots of high streets in general, and maybe the presence of something that is on the high street that is related to the subjects. That's not just taking place. I did take part in the community engagement, but you know, I think it was the Cambrian Centre where I found the last option to go to give my feedback. So I'm just thinking about some sort of central hub that is in the middle of everyone. You know, if you're out shopping, I don't know, whatever you're doing, you're taking children to school, but the high street is that place where people go. So maybe repurposing an empty space and getting a presence for a period of time, because the feedback is very important, because it is about the future. And
thank you. Yeah.
People like
thank you very much.
Can do that.
Yeah, that's I'm sure all the councillors have heard that. There is one question right at the back.
Two questions.
one about rubbish, and one about safety.
May I have your name, please, sir?
Steve from, I live in the Vineyard. So we've had a light out in the lamppost by the Duke's pub for probably about 2 years, and there's been many people ask about it, but from a safety point of view, I had to use a stick the other day. I fell down the stairs, walking home. A couple of guys approached me quite aggressively, and there was no light. And I just think something very simple like fixing a lamppost. You're doing the recharge, which is lovely, but somebody needs to look at the Duke's pub, a couple of doors along, there's a broken light. Secondly, we've got a commercial premises in Hill Rise, and above that there's a flat. But from a commercial point of view, we've got a shop and so on. We do the usual thing by buying bags and doing it with a commercial company. But for the flats above in Hill Rise, I don't think there's any proper way that they can actually put their rubbish out. It seems really simple, and going back to your rat problem. Obviously, if anybody just puts a black bag out, then in the morning it's all over the street. And I just wonder if there's some simple way. We live around the corner in the Vineyard, we've all got dustbins, but there doesn't seem to be the same process for people who actually have flats. And maybe I'm wrong, but we've had it for a year, and it's just an annoying thing. Effectively, what I do is I take home the rubbish and I take it to the recycle tip. But that isn't really the right answer for people who are in flats.
Thank you for your 2 questions, please.
So the street light, I didn't know about that, but now I do. Thanks for telling me. If you give me your contact details, I can find out more about it and get back to you and tell you what's being done about it. And the rubbish one, likewise, I will, and probably the other 2 here will talk to council officers about that and get some answers.
Can you report it like the lady said you can report?
Yeah, I think the point I might make to the gentleman, and I'm sorry I couldn't hear everything you were saying, I think the microphone was a bit muffled, but we do have an excellent reporting system on the council website and the council app, and we are all of us encouraging our residents to do that. And we've found that actually the residents really like to be empowered to report things directly. And what happens then is that if they get their reference number and they don't feel they've been responded to, just write to us and we will jump on it. And when we write in to actually for council officers to get involved in particularly lampposts and lights, they always, want to have a reference number, and we can do that now. And I think it's improved safety for people as well, feeling that they can report lights that are out. It gives a sense of empowerment to people.
And I know that works because I've done it around the church where the lights were not working, and within a week they were actually done, which was magic. Go ahead.
Well, just to build up slightly on this point, it's one point about empowering, but also it really helps us to fix things more efficiently, because when they're reported, officers then know that there is a problem, the location needs to be fixed, and they can work out the time and get right on it. So aside from reporting, I just want to encourage everyone to get in touch with us for any issues that they feel like we might have missed. Sometimes things can slip through the crack, or make us aware of things that we can follow up. By all means, just to get in touch, discuss those things with us. And also sometimes we might not have the answer right away, but we'll discuss with colleagues and officers on what's currently being done, on what's possible, and then we are able to get back to you in a more detailed manner as well.
Thank you. Councillor, may I ask you to stay at the microphone for a moment and talk about what it means to be a tenants champion?
Okay, so aside from being a South Richmond councillor, some of you may or may not know that I'm also the borough-wide tenants champion. What that means, I am a serious escalation service for social housing tenants when there's been issues going on unresolved with their providers, usually for over 6 months, often for longer than that. And this is a role that Richmond pioneered that I'm now in the second year of, and it is a extra layer of scrutiny. We are taking this very seriously, of scrutinizing our key partners in delivering social housing and the way they treat our social housing residents. And also, we are now in a very good position with the strengthening role of the social regulator. Richmond has done a lot of work in scrutinizing. But also, I'm very aware of the social housing problems in the borough, and I just wanted to say that South Richmond in particular does have a problem just because of the nature of it. We don't have much land, but we are working, and I'm very happy that my colleagues and I managed to deliver some of that much needed housing in Meadows Hall. But also, in my capacity as that, I sit on something that's called CIMARAC, that's a multi-agency panel board, and discusses complex cases that include a number of agencies, our police officers, safety officers, NHS, mental health, anything. I can't discuss anything that goes on those meetings, even with my fellow colleagues. There's a Chinese wall in that row and everything else, but we are talking about issues like safety across the borough, how we can tackle that, and how we can work creatively, how we can coordinate a multi-agency approach and use some lessons learned there and then build up on that for the whole borough. And my favorite example of that adaptability we've showed as a council is that lately at our latest planning committee we approved, after a lot of contention, a former derelict industrial site into more affordable housing, which was quite a task to do. But that's what I wanted to say. I'm the social housing tenants champion, but in that role I get a lot of insight about a lot of the issues across the borough and in the ward specifically, and we're working on developing an agile, adaptive strategy that works across various departments and coordinating with them.
Thank you very much. Thank you for explaining that. Councillor Baldwin, may I ask you to speak on the white ribbon?
It's just an announcement, or if you're not aware of the White Ribbon Campaign, it's an accreditation that we have here in Richmond, which is to promote allyship. I think I'm saying that correctly. It's really an international movement which was for men, started by men, to prevent violence against women and girls. And we are trying to promote that allyship. So we do marches around various parts of the borough. And North Richmond, we have one that comes at the end of 20 days, I think it's 20 days, 16 days of action having to do with various activities to prevent violence against women and girls. And we're having ours in North Richmond. We'll have the mayor there leading it. And we're extremely proud and grateful that London Welsh has decided to take part in our march and to allow us to go and speak to their members at their Christmas Day game and lunch. And we'd like to say anybody who lives in North Richmond, or even if you don't, please do join us. It's on December 9th at, am I right in that 1 o'clock? 12:45. Timing is essential because we have to get to lunch at London Welsh on time. We have to get there just before dessert so we can talk to them so they can go to their game. But yes, so we'd like to invite everyone to please do take part in that and come along. Thank you.
Can you say the date again, Nancy?
9th.
Can you say the date? What date is it?
December 9th. It's a Saturday, December 9th. Sorry, I thought I said that.
No, just to remind everybody, it's good to hear things twice. Thank you. And finally.
I'm sorry, just to pick up on a question that the gentleman at the back raised. You asked about flats and rubbish in flats. We are currently trialling lockable bins in One Road and Heath Road in Twickenham to see how that goes. It's specifically to allow people in flats to put their rubbish out. We're trialling it. and we'll see how that trial goes, and then hopefully, obviously, if it goes well, we'll want to kind of roll it out further if we can. But that's something that we're already looking into, but we've obviously got to see if it works first.
Thank you. Glad you. No, that's
a bit weird coming off the white woman.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I am going to take the very last question, sir. That's going to be yours.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Jack from North Richmond, and Richmond resident since 1974. And my question is about Pools on the Park. Are there any plans to upgrade this facility? Changing rooms, gym, very low level of hygiene. We've lost sauna, we've lost steam room over the years, and it seems that nothing is getting better there. Perfect facility to use. Current membership, full membership is £750 a year. So some people could even pay more if there were facilities upgraded. Thank you.
Yes. This issue came to the last Environment Committee, and the plans are to refurbish that part of Pools on the Park that used to house the health suite and turn it into more like a flexible space with some gym equipment as well. But the health suite itself is not going to be reinstated. That was the decision that was made at that committee. Personally, I disagreed with that, but that's the state of play. Unless anyone else wants to add anything, that's as far as...
Pity, actually, because this used to be the only health suite in the borough out of the whole centres we had, and we have nothing now. And I think if you ask people who use it, they will tell you what they think about it.
Yeah, well, I've heard what they think about it, and I can't say I disagree with it. But, I mean, that was the decision that was taken.
Well, any decision can be changed.
So yes, my understanding is from that very same Environment Committee meeting is that they are going to be looking at where else in the borough a health suite could be introduced. So I used to go to that in the 90s and noughties, the health suite at Pools in the Park. It's a shame to see it go, I agree. But I think at the end of the day, there were issues with both the cost of renovating it or introducing a new one, in fact, and also there was the energy issue as well, because of course we're trying to make this borough a greener borough, and we have reduced our CO2 emissions enormously, and we didn't want this to be become a source of more CO2 emissions. So the idea is, well, how can we have those kinds of facilities but with fewer CO2 emissions and energy consumption? The problem is, although those kind of things exist, it's a listed building, and the planning law is a problem here, because you can't really make the changes you'd need to make to bring those greener sources of energy into the building without breaking planning law. This is my understanding of what happened at the meeting. But yeah, as I say, the committee also agreed to look for a new place, a suitable location where this could be done, where there could be one.
I've been asked to allow for one more question, and that is definitely the last one. Okay, thank you. If you hold it close enough.
Yes, I'm Alan Jurians. I'm the spokesman for sport.
It's not working. I think you may have turned it off.
Hello? Hi, I'm Alan Jurians, the spokesman for sports in the borough. And the first part of that question, I think, was about renovating Pools on the Park as a whole. And there is significant funding already allocated in our capital projects plan to completely refurbish Pools on the Park anyway. That is only waiting on the finalisation of the leisure strategy, which has been delayed, unfortunately, for quite some time. But We have a new assistant director of leisure who's started in post in September, and it has been delayed again because obviously taking up the new post, he wanted to have a proper look at it himself before he signed it off. So it is happening. It's coming to committee in January, the first option paper, and then hopefully it should be finalised around the spring, and the investment should start to go in then. That's for the whole pools on the park. The health suite itself, the decision was taken 2 weeks ago at the Environment Committee to invest in a group exercise studio rather than the health suite. This was looked at very carefully and discussed. I think the councillors on the panel that were at that meeting are well aware, and several residents spoke at that meeting as well. It was debated very, very freely and frankly, and I think the ultimate decision was made to the investment into a group exercise studio because it would meet the needs of more residents and in terms of physical exercise, physical activity, which is what we're trying to promote, rather than the health suite. And it's unfortunate, and I realise that some people that wanted the health suite are very upset about that, but that was the decision that was taken, and I think it probably was the right one in the end.
Thank you. That was the last contribution then for this evening. Now, I believe that on your seats, not here, but on your seats, you've got an evaluation form, and I am asked to tell you, to remind you, please, to complete that, because otherwise the councillors and the council won't know how this evening has been for you. While you do that, this is multitasking now, could you please also show your thanks to all those people who have worked here this evening, to our councillors and to the Richmond Adult College. Thank you for your support. And thank you for being here. This comes from me, not from the councillors. Thank you for being here and for your questions and contributions. I hope you found it useful. Thank you.
We will be using the feedback from these feedback forms to improve the community conversations going forward. So if you could please put down the fact that you want more of these, that's great, because that seems to be part of it, and whether or not you prefer coming personally or online or anything, please feel free to put any extra comment you like.